I will utterly slaughter her children. I'll throw her onto a bed of illness. Anyone who fornicates with her, I will cause great distress. I'll smash them like clay pots. Jesus said that? We're doing this whole series on the book of Revelation right now because when the world gets chaotic, there's a section of the population that loves to run to the book of Revelation, trying to find apocalyptic answers for their current chaos. That's not why it was written. So we're in this series figuring out what exactly it meant to the original audience and then wondering together about what it might mean for us. It opens with the author John having this cosmic vision of Jesus, and then Jesus asks him to deliver a message to 7 different churches. We already looked at the first 3 churches. You can find those links in the description below. And today we're going to look at the 4th. It's to the Christians living in the ancient city of Thyatira. Unlike some of the other cities that we've looked at, Thyatira wasn't a major Roman religious hub or really a coastal trading port. It was a union town. It was where the hardworking people lived. The ethos of the town centered around the trades, everything from copper and bronze smelting to dyed cloths and clothing. The coins in that city featured 2 figures. Apollo Tyrimnaeus on one side, who was the patron god of the bronze industry, and the Emperor of Rome, with the title the Son of God on the other side of the coin. Everything in civic life, though, revolved around these trades and their associated guilds or unions. I think that's why Jesus introduces himself the way he does this time. These are the words of the Son of God, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. He's going to try and supplant the current Son of God and the bronze industry deity. He's going to do it because his people are struggling. I mean, participation in the guilds was paramount. You had to pay dues, you had to attend ceremonies, you had to honor the guild gods, you had to participate in their feasts and festivals. And this made it really difficult for a Christian living in Thyatira. I mean, to opt out of participating in a guild was opting out of a job. It was opting out of your network. It was opting out of your income. Your life wasn't on the line like in some of the other cities, but your livelihood was. Your identity in your work was. You can't be in the union and refuse to participate in the union. You can't be in the guild and then snub the god of the guild. So that put Christians on the outs. And listen, some of the Christian community did an incredible job stepping up to take care of those who fell on hard times. Jesus even acknowledges it in the message by saying, I know your deeds, your love, and your faith, your service, and your perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first. He acknowledges that they've grown a ton, but there's still a problem. With all of the pressure to violate their religious values in order to stay in business, it makes sense that a voice would rise up within the Christian community, a so-called prophetess, someone who would claim to speak on behalf of God, a leader within the church. She rose up and she taught a compromise. Now, we don't know her real name, but we do know that Jesus calls her a name. He calls her a Jezebel, and here's what he says. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman, a Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I've given her time to repent of her immorality, but she is unwilling. All right, so what's going on here? To call someone a Jezebel is a reference to an infamous Old Testament character. Jezebel was a Sidonian woman who became the wife of the Israelite king Ahab. Her people were worshippers of Baal, and some of Baal's worship practices included prostitution and child sacrifice. And once she gained power as queen, she cut off Ahab's access to the prophets of God, Yahweh, killing many of them, and then enlisting the prophets of Baal and setting up a house for them in the land. Her story ends pretty gruesomely. She dies by falling from a tower, and then she gets eaten by dogs. It's all kind of violent and gross. But the whole point was that she used her power and influence to lead people away from God's calling to be a light to the nations and toward practices that violated their values. Jesus is accusing this so-called prophet of Thyatira of doing that same thing. It's most likely that she was teaching some kind of compromise that allowed the Christians in Thyatira there to hold on to both worlds, to maintain their Christ-likeness and also continue to participate in the guilds. However, this was leading to the embrace of some sexual immorality and taking part in meals that honored and worshipped the guild gods. Now, I think it's really important to point out here that Sex and food are not inherently problematic. It's when sex and food become a pathway to abandoning the way of Jesus. Now, how is that happening? Well, sexual immorality here is a catch-all term for sexual acts that objectify and dehumanize other people. Jesus thought people were so valuable that they were worth dying for, not objects who exist for our own pleasure. And the meat sacrifice to an idol thing isn't that big a deal in and of itself, but when it was a pathway to participation in feasts and ceremonies that contained worship of other gods and dehumanizing of other people, it pulled you away from the way of Jesus. That's why it's problematic. These Jesus followers were called to be a light to this world, not blend in and look exactly like it. That's what Jezebel's teaching was corrupting, their ability to shine. And Jesus has some harsh words for her and those who followed her corrupt teaching. So I will cast her on a bed of suffering. This is a Hebrew idiom that means I'll punish her with illness. And I will make those who commit adultery with her suffer intensely unless they repent of her ways. Now, to clarify, in this case, committing adultery with her wasn't about physically having sex with her. It was about following her teaching and compromising with the guild culture. I will strike her children dead. This is about her relationship to her followers, not her physical children, but her children in the faith. In a sense, she started her own cult within the church, and its followers are like her children now. Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds. This is nearly a verbatim reference to Old Testament prophet language, except prophets like Jeremiah would put these words in God's mouth. It's kind of telling that here they come from Jesus' mouth. Now I say to the rest of you in Thyatira, to you who do not hold to her teaching and have not learned Satan's so-called deep secrets. A literal translation here would be, to you who do not hold to her teaching and have not known the depths of Satan as called. It's a bit of a confusing sentence construction, but likely what's in view here is that this Jezebel is claiming to teach a deeper truth about God that then gives way to compromise. Jesus is then tongue-in-cheek calling it not the depths of God, but the depth of Satan. I say to the rest of you, I will not impose any other burden on you except to hold on to what you have until I come. And by what you have, he means the command you have from me. The sentence construction here is reminiscent of a decision from the early church. They argued about whether the way of Jesus was only for Jewish followers or if Gentiles could be included too. And if so, how? They arrived at not imposing the entire Old Testament law of Moses on the Gentiles, but instead just telling them to refrain from sexual immorality and meat sacrificed to idols. Why? Because these were both pathways back into participating in dehumanizing pagan cults and away from the way of Jesus. To the one who is victorious and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. That one will rule with them with an iron scepter and will dash them to pieces like pottery, just as I have received authority from my Father. I will also give that one the morning star. Whoever has ears, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Smashed pottery? Morning star? The smashed pottery is actually a quote from a messianic prediction in Psalm 2, which Christians attributed to Jesus. Jesus is saying here, rather than joining the apostate prophetess, you can join me. The morning star is an important piece too. The morning star was a reference to the appearance of Venus in the night sky. It was the last star to appear before night would turn to morning. It was a signal that a new day was dawning. It's originally, again, about the Messiah. Jesus is sharing this identity here with his followers. You, he says, are going to be that signal with me of a new day dawning, of a new reality breaking into this one. Now, I think the Christians in Thyatira would have received this message from Jesus in two ways. First, it would have been an encouragement and an acknowledgement to keep doing the good things that they were already doing. A new day is dawning in you. But it was also a warning. You don't have to compromise with the guild gods or that fake son of God. You have me. Don't let the Jezebels of this world twist my words, promising some deeper truth and giving you a pathway to compromise. You have everything you need from me. Now, what might any of that mean for you and me? Well, I think it can be an encouragement to devote ourselves to love, faithfulness, service, and perseverance. I mean, this is the way of Jesus, and this is what Jesus' new reality will be guided by. And it's also a warning again about compromise. There's always going to be voices rising up within the community, finding pathways for you to participate in dehumanization and objectification, especially in order to stay in business. Those voices may even call what they're doing the deeper truths of God. But know that you have everything you need from Jesus. Lean on a community of his followers when you're in need. So, what about you? What are the Jezebels in your own life, tempting you to compromise on what you know Jesus is calling you to? Where are you tempted to get comfortable with dehumanization or objectification, especially in order to stay in business? And on the more positive side, where have you seen the love and the faith and the service or perseverance in the way of Jesus shown in your life? Throw it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, if you haven't yet, hit that like and that subscribe button, because that tells the algorithm to send this to more people to help them on their own faith journey. If you're looking for more ways to grow, I send out weekly emails with more to help you in your faith journey. You can find that link in the description below. And lastly, keep an eye out for my weekly office hours. You can drop in digitally to chat, to pray, and to hang out together. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.